Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at the political dynamics within the country, especially in light of the Lahore High Court's order with regards to the suspension of the resignations earlier accepted by the National Assembly Speaker and even previously withdrawn by the PTI. And then, of course, the issue of denotification of these parliamentarians, which the National Assembly Speaker has said is something that they're going to have to look into, and they still haven't received the particular order after the Lahore High Court has suspended this acceptance of the resignations. What that means in terms of the centre and how the PTI seems to be celebrating their triumph in terms of their moves to oust the current political setup within the National Assembly and the return to the Parliament, also gaining the seat of the leader of the opposition in the House, and what it means with regards to the legal options available for PML-N and the current political setup in terms of the issues of jurisdictions of judiciary and the Parliament, which are of course important concerns. And since unfortunately the Parliament seems to be the only place where political matters are not being discussed and the only place where they should be. And so we're going to be taking a look at this in further detail. At the same time, we also know that the PTI has kept on insisting about the announcement of elections in KP and Punjab after the dissolution of their assemblies. And we know that in a recent development, the President, Mr. Alvi, has also written a letter to the ECP calling for an immediate announcement of the polls, to which a number of people have also responded that it is perhaps the President himself that needs to announce it, and then after that, within 7 days, the ECP will be taking a look of the matter. Of course, we're going to try and explore the legality of this in further detail as well, and also consider this in terms of the obligations upon the governors and the ECP with regards to the announcement of the date and elections, since there hasn't been any particular time announced legally in terms of the announcement of the elections, but there is only the 90 days time period within which the elections are to be held. And this, of course, now is in the court of the ECP, who may decide whether or not there is any rationale or basis through which these elections can be delayed, if there's any security or economic concerns that need to be kept in mind. But at the moment, it seems that the 90 days time period is still there, and that the elections are expected to be held constitutionally within this time period. So we're going to take a look at that in further detail and what it means in terms of the way that the political setup is going to evolve both in KP and Punjab, and then of course at the centre, the kind of politics being played by the PTI as well, since of course their jail baro tehreek is also something that is underway, with the PTI chairman asking its workers to register, and then of course for this particular movement to also be used as a way forward for the general elections to be called, which are happening anyway by the end of the year. So that's going to be our first segment of the show today. Our next one is going to take a look at what is going on internationally. A huge crisis and national disaster, of course, struck Syria and Turkey, and this is of course something of a huge concern for the people of Pakistan, since Turkey has been one of the first countries to help us in our times of need, and we stand by the people of both Turkey and Syria in this need of hour. And of course, Pakistan has been working tirelessly also in terms of its contribution towards relief activities. A large number of humanitarian aid has already been shifted to these countries, and then we also of course know that it is important for us to be looking at this in terms of a humanitarian issue. And so the importance of sanctions in place, and the importance of the international community and political leaders all over the world to take into account humanitarian assistance and humanitarian need as a priority is something that is largely being debated at the moment, since unfortunately we've seen that while a lot of the community members have immediately stepped up to help the people of Turkey, the same sort of response has not been given to the people of Syria, who are already of course suffering from war and have been dealing with a lot of disaster within their own country for quite some time. And now of course the earthquake has added to their problems, and with that of course are the freezing temperatures as well, which the people are continuing to bear. And so this is a difficult time, and perhaps only the issue of humanity needs to be discussed here. So we're going to take a look at what that means and what are the needs of these people and how they are to be met internationally as well. That's going to be our focus in the second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farooq Batafi, and for our first segment, I've been joined by Rana Maqbool Ahmad Saab, who's Senator PML-N. Thank you very much, Rana Saab, for being a part of the discussion and joining us today in the debate. We, of course, are going to be taking a look at the current political situation, but what it means, of course, in terms of the legalities is going to be an important discussion too. But Farooq, let me first start with the question of the issue of judiciary and the parliament that is, of course, being discussed. And we have talked about many times before also how the political matters, unfortunately, end up in the courts, and something that shouldn't happen and something that needs to be discussed at the parliament. But again, when we have political parties and leaders also triumphing over such matters and celebrating the fact that this is something that is helping them politically, it seems that this question or this issue of the judiciary versus the parliament is ignored, and only their political gain is mattering at the moment. How do we move forward in terms of the issues of clarity that is required within the constitution, the issues of political matters being decided where there needs to be some sort of understanding as to what needs to happen, and then also be able to respect the jurisdiction of the parliament?
Right, Sana, if you remember, there is a term called a trichotomy of power. It was being discussed especially when Imran Khan Sahib tried to dissolve the assembly, and the matter actually went up in the court. And it was PTI that was repeatedly alluding to this, and they were saying that there should be trichotomy of power, and jurisdiction of legislature should be respected, right? If you remember, it was it was said to be a case of privilege of the speaker or deputy speaker. But at that time we know what happened, because there was already a vote of no confidence that was in motion, and it had to be voted on, and then the deputy speaker tried to just send the assembly off without any process. So the matter came up. Now exactly the same kind of situation, but in a different direction. At this moment, Speaker of National Assembly has the prerogative, according to the Constitution of Pakistan, to accept resignation of anybody who tenders their resignation. The only thing that needs to be satisfied is Speaker's query, and whether he has been satisfied or not. And in this case, of course, there has been the matter of double jeopardy, twice resignations being accepted twice. So the matter was taken up by Lahore High Court, and there was a stay given on the matter. Because of that, because of the suspension of denotification, and because of the suspension of disqualification or acceptance of resignation, it was expected that today PTI would go, and especially these 43 people, and they will go to the parliament, and they will actually try to change the opposition leader, and after that, of course, they will try to bring down the house as quickly as possible. So there seems to be a clear conflict here, especially when it comes to jurisdiction or domain. The speaker says that he respects the court's order, but he hasn't received any. And that's why PTI's members who had actually resigned and then resigned again, and then they took back their resignation, but it was accepted, they cannot be admitted, right? Because of that, there is a kind of chaos that seems to be brewing. And that's why one wanted that honorable court not grant any kind of stay on the matter, because there is so much polarization, and because there is so much pressure in the politics of the country, that if you create any moment of lull, somebody is going to try to take advantage. So this matter is now pending before the court, and we are going to wait and see what becomes of it. But for now, there seems to be a gridlock where one party actually wants to go, but it doesn't want to go and become part of the parliament. It does want to only topple the apple cart, so that there can be an election before time. And then there's another party which is government and speaker and all, and they don't want the apple cart to be toppled, and that's why they're trying to protect it. Unfortunately, in Pakistan's history, because parliament seldom does its job well, the matters end up with the courts.
Right.
And that's why it seems that somehow it has been deemed a right to intervene in these matters as well, and that becomes a tricky ground.
Right, absolutely. Rana Saab, welcome to the debate. We're of course taking a look at the current political situation, especially in light of the Lahore High Court's suspension of the earlier acceptance of resignations of the 43 lawmakers of PTI. And it seems that this is something that is being celebrated and something that is being rejoiced by the PTI in terms of their ability now to select a leader of the opposition. But in terms of where the Speaker stands, or where the National Assembly stands, and what the current political setup has in terms of the options available, what do you think will be exercised now? Because of course we know that it's just a suspension at the moment, and the Speaker also says the order hasn't been received. But in terms of this particular decision by the Lahore High Court, what sort of aspects remain now in the Speaker's power in terms of moving ahead?
Thank you, Sna. My respects and salam to Patafi Sahab for a very heartening to listen to you, both of you. I personally think the Honorable Court took this decision or gave this interim order without giving an opportunity to have audience from the concerned parties. Straight away, the order of the Election Commission or the Speaker was suspended. Ordinarily, since the issue is very crucial, there should have been an opportunity to the Speaker and to the Election Commission to be heard thoroughly after the first party, the petitions were heard. So that would have been resolving the issue. Unfortunately, it happened so expeditiously, which has rather got the confusion confounded. No decision can be taken at this stage, even by the court, if they are not given proper hearing, all the concerned parties. The High Court has issued notices to the Election Commission and to the Speaker to come forward or give the comments in the court or send their counsel to represent them to have their version heard in the court. I personally think only decision will be taken after giving proper hearing to the concerned parties like Election Commission and the Speaker. More so, as student of law, I personally think this order or judgment cannot be delivered by a single judge because it's an important issue. Therefore, a larger bench will have to be constituted. And I personally think on the next date, the Honorable Judge, after giving preliminary hearing to the parties, he'll send the file to the High Court to constitute a larger bench to address the issue. So that is the situation at this stage. But unfortunately, if the Honorable Court goes into the details to investigate, so the final outcome would be that all these MNAs, they demonstrated their genuine intention to resign. Not only once, the Deputy Speaker who was presiding over the event right in the beginning, when these resignations were submitted, in one go he said, I have accepted the resignation of all the MNAs who have submitted the resignation. This was not only announced by him, it was repeatedly said by the leader, like Imran Khan, that they have resigned. So they have shown their intent time and again. Now if they are retreating or getting back, I don't know, it will be tenable or not. But Honorable Judge should have waited ordinarily to reach the conclusion after listening to the views of both the parties. Sometimes we are carried away with media reports, etc. So it adds to the complication. So I personally think it will end like this, after thorough hearing by a larger bench. It cannot be, this process cannot be completed by a single bench. That is the situation in this case. But if we allow me, perhaps you allow me, you were talking about the election as well.
Right.
May I comment a little on that? So election, there are two views, even in the government party as well, that election should be held in time, meaning thereby within 90 days. But there is an article of the Constitution, Article 254. All of us must study that article thoroughly. It speaks volumes for the circumstances and the conditions if they are not conducive for elections. So if the elections are not held with proper justification, it cannot cause any culpable offense, as people claim that there will be Article 6. Because this Article 254 is a safety valve. If the action is judicious and justiciable and really does have the logic and the argument, proper argument, not to hold the elections. Now there are different views, as it's time and again being the economic crisis and the calamity, and of late the flood situation, and more so the decision by the Council of Common Interest that we cannot overlook. The Council of Common Interest gave a ruling a few months before, during the period of the former government, that first of all, census are to be completed, and after the census are completed, there had to be demarcation issue of the constituencies. After that, it's completed, then the elections can be held. So there are not many views and not many
Right, but
reasons.
Rana Sahab, all of these issues that you're pointing out regarding the census or the conditions, or of course there is the resources that are also being questioned, and then the kinds of scenario that we have in terms of the threat of terrorism. So many indicators pointing towards this particular election being a question mark. But isn't that the issue over here when we have the PTI talking about the delaying tactics, or perhaps the fact that there is a lot put in question in terms of credibility? Even though there may be valid reasons or justifications at the moment, there is of course still the 90 days time bar that is being reiterated time and again by all legal bodies, and something that is being termed that has to be respected under the Constitution. And so if these conditions are there and there is any reason for the ECP or any other body for in terms of delaying the elections, what sort of an impact do you think that is going to have regarding the timing and the way it is being viewed and narrated by the leadership of the PTI? Because of course there's also the impact that that will have on the way the current political setup will pay the cost.
Yes, personally, I think that PTI always venture to make this nation their personal slave, and they should fall to the whims of PTI's leader, who is unfortunately ceases to be a normal man. So, are we sold out to his whims? Are we sold out to his idiosyncratic behavior? Whatever he'll decide, maybe it's absolutely incorrect and we should obey his directions. Already nations ruined due to his policies, due to his unpredictable behavior, due to his betrayal of the commitment with the IMF, and not many issues which have caused so much of devastation to the economy and to the social fabric of the country, even to the cultural aspect of the country, even to the extent of using proper diction as far as our society is concerned. He has harmed altogether, closely harmed the nation's concerns on many aspects. Therefore, we have to analyze. Let's not be carried away by media reports or by one or two pressure groups talking on that. It's therefore people are also insisting on going through Article 254. Article 254 says if certain constitutional provisions are not implemented due to certain reasons, so it doesn't cause a culpable offense, as they are talking about Article 6. It's not even offense because there is a safety valve in the Constitution. It's the proponents of the Constitution thought there should
Rana
be
Sahab, I
natural
understand that, but can you also highlight the possibility of the delay? What are you expecting?
Not that the issue is in the court. And finally, I personally think if all depends upon the Election Commission's first version. If Election Commission gets back to the court and tells that these are the reasons and this is the provision of Article 254, we can't hold the elections due to certain compulsions and difficult obstructions in a way of conducting election for the time being. And this is mandatory on us that first of all, we should complete the census issue. Then we should go for earmarking the constituencies. Then we'll go for elections. So there is a reason. There is a reason, the logic of the Election Commission. If Election Commission gets back to the court with this viewpoint, it will be thoroughly discussed. Councils from both sides will argue, and finally, the larger bench of certain court will decide. This is what I foresee. It will happen like that.
Right. Well, we'll of course be able to see how that proceeds, but it seems that again the matter will be decided by the courts. Farooq, there's also of course the development of the president writing the letter with regards to an immediate call for the elections, and there is of course something that's also being talked about in terms of the president's actions both now and in the past because of his close proximity with the PTI. And when we take a look at the current situation and the way that demands are being called for early for elections and the announcement within KP and Punjab by the PTI, how will this particular decision or move by the president be taken in political terms as to the call for immediate elections in the provinces?
Right,
Sana, there is submission. May I
yes, sir,
submit
please go ahead.
only? Sorry, Professor. I have gone through the direction of the president. It cannot be direction. No authority can direct the Election Commission what to do, except for the court. So it's just a suggestion. It can be taken as a suggestion. And he has cited certain laws and certain articles, which all of us know. So legally, this reference by the president is not going to change the situation. So it all, as I've already submitted, it all depends upon the stance of the Election Commission, which it does take before the court of law.
Right. Yes, Farooq.
Right. Since that question has already been answered.
No, but the political impact also.
Yeah, but I simply wanted to point out that as per the law, it is governor who is supposed to, when it comes to provincial elections, who is supposed to give out the date, right, and fix a date. And that is what is supposed to happen. Otherwise, of course, this matter will go to the courts, has gone to the courts, and it will see some kind of mulling over by the legal or judicial authorities. But regarding president's influence, president is the head of federation, he is the head of the state. But when it comes to, various layers of power, tiers of power, in province's case, it is governor who is supposed to make that call. So as was pointed out by Rana Sahab, it is not binding. It is going to be considered as a suggestion. But having said that, I know what the president must be going through at this moment. There seems to be ungodly pressure from PTI itself, because every post that PTI's some office bearer occupied at some time, their supporters or other, wannabes actually always kept on criticizing because they wanted that position for themselves. So I have pointed out in the past as well, the moment there was speculation that perhaps Imran Khan Sahib is going to be arrested, at that time, a number of leaders start calling out the president that why are you sitting there? Come down and do something. The president then had to go to Zaman Park and meet Imran Khan Sahib twice, right? Because of that kind of dynamics, he's under pressure and he has to concede. But it doesn't change the situation on the ground. Sana, let me remind everybody that if you are looking at the national discourse, if you are looking at national media, can you honestly tell that only a week ago, 102 people were killed in, especially policemen were killed in Peshawar? Or for that matter, today, the forex reserves dipped below $3 billion. This is the kind of state when you think that everything is really, really in emergency, and you are in a crisis mode. And at that time, your national discourse does not reflect that, your politics does not reflect that. With due respect, even when it comes to honorable courts, because of course they are actually part of the society, there too it seems that holding an election is more central to the argument than the crises that we are facing. And what happens, Sana? When the government actually tried to introduce austerity measures or electricity conservation measures, immediately, two provincial governments at that time with PTI refused to comply, right? Especially Peshawar. A court actually gave them relief and suspended that order. Similarly, when government actually tried to introduce super tax to collect from the very rich, one-time tax, that was also shot down by the honorable courts. Now the problem is that we all are part of the same state. We are all part of the same country. If we are not going to understand where we are at right now in history and how vulnerable we are to the ill winds, then I think there is hardly any point in you or I trying to save anything, because then the entire village doesn't want to cooperate. But otherwise, circumstances are such, Sana, that first of all, you have to save the country. You have to save the economy. God forbid, tomorrow Pakistan goes bankrupt. The country doesn't have money to pay even for the petrol, fuel bills or anything else. It does not have the capacity to pay salaries. What is going to happen? Do you think any of these departments is going to be paid then? Or are we going to actually work without pay for long periods of time? The countries are saved by the collective will of people to survive. And at this moment, sadly, because your media has compilation 50 channels, and all are just talking about Imran Khan's mood and how Imran Khan Sahab wants to do this or that or the other thing. And then institutions seem to be puzzled as well. In the end, we are in this lurch. For heaven's sake, we need to wake up. Otherwise, we might be able to do the impossible, sink the ship which was thought to be unsinkable.
Right. Rana
Sana,
yes, go ahead.
My submission is adding a little more to what Patafi Sahab has said. Unfortunately, we are putting total onus on the present government, the federal government. Federal government, which was confined to capital. The bigger portion of the state was under the command of Imran Khan. Punjab, being the largest province, was with him, and KPK, the second largest province, was with him. So the provincial governments, and especially after 18th Amendment, they do have a lot of powers. As far as the economy, welfare, other measures are concerned. Look at them. What have they done with KPK? Now he has mentioned about 102 casualties and martyrdom of the police officers. Have we seen their performance? This performance of Imran Khan, and still he is demanding the election as if the only savior of the country. There is no snipers with the Jawans. They are exposed. There are no thermal guns with them. There is no safe city arrangement. There is no proper counterterrorism equipment and structures. If these things could be built in Punjab, why he was there for the last more than 10 years? What did he do? Now coming down to the ATA issue, as perhaps mentioned, I mentioned the previous interaction with you as well. The ATA issue is totally under the control of the provincial governments. They are having go-downs, wheat go-downs. The flour mills are under their command and under their control. The market committees are with them. And the management of the markets, right, vegetable markets, grain markets, it's the baby of the provincial government. Have you ever seen their people regulating the markets? Have you ever seen their people checking the markets? Have you ever seen their people having a crusade against the hoarders who stored the wheat right in the beginning during summer, and once the winter is there, then they start selling wheat on very high rates. And they have been resorting to indiscriminate smuggling. Who has to go for enforcement? These are all failings of the Imran Khan government. These are the responsibilities of the provincial government. For God's sake, our people at the helm of affairs should try to analyze and understand who is responsible for this total crisis. His inefficiency and his, I would say, malice against others. This is what he has been doing all along. It's therefore I submitted very humbly that we are not his slaves. Why then institutions and the whole of the nation is becoming skilled and falling to his whims at the cost of the country's existence and country's future? We must reconsider our policy. I'm respectfully requesting everybody, the people who are giving decisions and people who are giving different type of comments. He is a cricketer. He might have been your hero right in the beginning when you were young children. But he is not a savior of the country. He is not a competent politician. He is not an accomplished statesman.
Rana Sahab, irrespective of that, it seems that he still is someone who's perhaps given some sort of special treatment, especially in terms of zero accountability or zero consequence. Yes. And in a way, it seems that there may be some sort of slavery involved in one sense.
Right. And Rana Sahab, since you are talking about the importance of not being slave to one man, let me ask you, why is it that the government, which is actually at helm of affair at the center, which had to hold an APC, why does it feel that it keeps on deferring APC? Because Imran Khan or his party might have some convenience issues and they might want it deferred.
I don't think that this is the reason, because midway the Prime Minister had a plan to go to Turkey. So therefore it was postponed. He couldn't go because I personally think they also responded from there. They really appreciated his gesture as intention to go. And they thanked the Prime Minister of Pakistan for his feelings and for his response and for the aid he has sent to them. That is that's a brethren country, but the APC is likely to take place within 3-4 days. It will not take much of time. Okay, if he will be invited, if he comes, all right, he will be welcomed. If he does not participate, this is all up to him. No, he has to face the consequences. His cases are getting mature, and after a few weeks or days, if he is convicted or disqualified, he'll create a lot of hue and cry. But the evidence is so impregnable and so invincible that it will be a miracle he can be saved from the impact of allegations against him, which already get substantiated without any doubt. So that is there. That crisis has to continue.
Right, but Rana Sahab, the issue of lack of consequence is still there, and you can respond to that. But let me add to that the question, of course, also in terms of the way that the political future is expected to evolve, especially with the kind of moves that are expected from the PTI if they do return to the National Assembly. They have also vocalized about it before in the past, and now it seems that that is the impetus that this is going towards. What then are the options available, irrespective, of course, the court's decision coming out available to the political setup and how they plan to challenge this particular aspect. And then, of course, when we know that all of this is being done for a delay in elections, and so far the government stands undeterred, but is there anything that can put a question mark to the general elections?
No, the general elections will be taking place in time. There is no question of general election taking place earlier. Rather, it will facilitate that we reach the election time, whatever is already under the law, under the Constitution. So rather, pressure on the government for general elections will be over for the time being. My elections of the provincial government, for that I have already submitted you the reasons. If the Election Commission gets back to the court with these reasons, and the chairman of the Election Commission does convince the court, then the election will not be held for the provincial assemblies as well. But it all depends upon the final adjudication by the full bench or by the larger bench. It will take some time. I don't think so it can be decided within 2 days or 3 days. The proper hearing has to be conducted. It's a crucial issue. But if the elections are not held, I don't think so it will harm anything. They are creating hue and cry that it will create disharmony, as if he has brought a lot of harmony already in the country. He really destroyed the system. So unfortunately, if he continues to be the pampered child of the system, country will be further harmed more than before.
Right. Thank you very much, Rana Saab, for joining us and being a part of the debate and talking to us at length regarding the political scenario currently and, of course, the expected evolution, especially in terms of the resignation that were earlier accepted. And then, of course, there was an issue with regards to the Lahore High Court deciding to suspend that. But of course, much remains to be seen as to how this is going to evolve and what's going to come of it. But we're now going to be taking a look at the next segment of the show, which focuses on the issue of the huge national disaster in Turkey and in Syria. And that, of course, is extremely important in terms of Pakistan being able to provide help to this very important issue. And then, of course, taking into account the needs of the people of both Turkey and Syria. And Farooq, we know, of course, that Pakistan has tirelessly made efforts in the past, and also something that has been done first and foremost by Turkey, and then, of course, other countries in Pakistan's need of our as well. But at this time, there seems that there is a lot that needs to be done with regards to the kind of aid that is needed by both the countries. And in terms of the response that the international community has given, how do you see the way that the people have stepped up to meet the needs of the people in both Turkey and Syria? Because there seems to be some distinction there.
Right, Sana. When you talk about Turkey, Turkey is on main grid. It has never been disconnected. Because of that, international bodies can actually reach out to the people of Turkey, and they can actually deliver goods, services, protection, medicine, everything. But Syria has a different case. You know, it has been fighting a civil war for almost a decade. It started with the Arab Spring, and that has continued. Right now, the government in Syria has consolidated its position. But just to remind everybody that Bashar al-Assad is not favorite of any international body, or for that matter, main powers that are calling shots internationally, particularly the US or Europe. So what is happening right now is because there are sanctions, because there are such circumstances that neither media can cover, Syria that comfortably, nor international bodies can go in and deliver the support or help. That is why the situation is getting from bad to worse. It already was a war-torn country. It already was a country which was almost practically demolished because of the Cold War, because of the Civil War, and because of the infighting. And you have seen some of the most historic cities in the country which have been actually bombed to the prehistoric times. And because of that, the circumstances are such that not a lot of aid is reaching out to the Syrian people. So Pakistan, despite the fact that we hardly ever enjoyed very close ties with Syria, we are very close with Turkey, and we have actually dispatched whatever aid we could afford to immediately provide. But we have also dispatched our special planes with provisions to Syria as well. Regardless of politics, it is about humanity. It is about the people who are suffering on the ground. So Pakistan's role must be mentioned here, and I hope that other countries also relax their conditionality so that people don't suffer.
Right, and of course that is indeed commendable in terms of prioritizing humanity, and that's of course what is needed to be done. And as you mentioned, that other countries perhaps should also follow suit. But in terms of the way that the hindrances are there for this to happen, do you think that there can be any provisions made on humanitarian grounds? And if not, what sort of aspects are there that are stopping countries to do that, especially in light of such a huge national calamity?
Right, Sana, I have actually mentioned Bashar al-Assad, but let us also remember what else was happening during the civil war. At that time, Daesh, or for that matter, ISIS or IS then, actually rose, and it was controlling a significant portion of the country. Then, of course, there is the matter of Al-Qaeda of Arabian Peninsula, right? That was also operating there. Because of that, the country was divided into various spheres of influence. Then there is the issue of Kurdish population as well. Because of all that, and because the international community also kept on intervening, we saw that the US was also involved in Syria. Because of that, the country was really on shaky grounds already. Because of that, the position of the ruler also hardened, and finally, when he got his chance with aid from the two countries, Russia and Iran, it actually he consolidated his position, and because of that, it is both push and pull factor. On one side, the country's ruler will be skeptical of any aid that is coming there, because he would see that as a potential possibility of reigniting the civil war in the country through other means. And then there is the issue of that man not being acceptable to the Western powers, and because of that, there are sanctions. It is a country which is not unknown to the UN. Every other year, there used to be humongous hearings at the UNSC, right? So this time also, what I hope that happens is that UNSC also convenes a session, suspends some of the very hard-hitting sanctions, and allows the aid to go in, and then there should be some coordination between the government and the international donor associations, organizations, so that it reaches to the people and circumstances improve.
Right, that's important, of course. But in terms of when we take a look at the way that, of course, countries like Pakistan have also dealt with huge natural calamities, including earthquakes in the past, and of course, we're still dealing with climate-induced disasters such as the floods. The kind of help and coordination, perhaps, that is required both within the country and then, of course, from help outside the community contributes a lot in terms of how a country is able to deal with such disasters. So given the current situation and the scale of the disaster, how do you think Syria can cope up with the challenges that it faces, especially the people who are suffering because of this natural disaster? And what can be done, especially with regards to media, in terms of helping those?
Right. I think that international media might not be reaching to the ground level, to the grassroots level, because of the circumstances that I mentioned. But there is one organization that has had good access, that is Al Jazeera. So thanks to that, and perhaps because of technology as well, we have been seeing pictures pouring in from Syria as well. But remember, just hold one image in mind. Do you remember one child who died on a shore called Elan Kurdi? Another picture where a child actually is in great discomfort because his building has been bombed, and there was he was hurt in his head. And then the children who were allegedly facing chemical attack, and that's why they couldn't breathe. All those pictures were from Syria, Sana. Yeah. So, right, because of that and all these issues, the first possibility that I would have expected is when you are in a state of crisis, Pakistan is an exception, not everyone will be. The first possibility is your most aligned allies. Russia could have done it, but Russia is very deeply occupied by Ukraine. Then Iran could have done a lot, but Iran seems to be highly sanctioned and in a very thick bind, right? Because of that, at this moment, it has to be the UN which can do something, and it can actually try to offer any kind of aid as possible. NGOs, organizations, IGOs will keep on collecting fund and relief goods. But then the problem again lies with the political topography of Syria.
And that is, of course, indeed unfortunate, especially in terms of the huge number of people who've had to deal with this particular issue. And then, of course, how these victims have unfortunately also been dealing with so many others within the country. And because of that, we know that the situation has increased, and we, of course, need to be able to understand the issue of humanitarian aid that is required by the people of Turkey and Syria equally in terms of the disaster and in terms of how humanitarian grounds perhaps need to be considered first and foremost before anything else is considered. But of course, much of that still remains to be seen, but we hope that the international community responds equally towards the needs of the people all over the world. Thank you, Farooq, for being part of the debate as always. We'll conclude the discussion right now, and we'll continue with, of course, more stories from around the world and within Pakistan tomorrow.